So I wanted to say that there is a rise in cults, and I think more so now than ever before because of the fear of the end. And so there's so much disease and so many people that have different versions of information, and not all the information is good information. And you have people who have sort of been kind of waiting in the background for a time like this to come so that they can use this as an opportunity to make money off of people who are uneducated or ignorant to the medicines and the misinformation and what is good for them, and what is not good for them physically. And you even have people who will say that even though the FDA has approved medications or vaccines, that not everything is safe. Well, I think some of that, in some sense, is like I would say a half truth. Anything you take for a physical illness, there's always side effects, there's always risk with anything that you take, anything. And I do believe this. And even if it is approved by a doctor, people will go into CVS, Walgreens, Rite Aid, their local pharmacy, and take over the counter medications, things for fevers and headaches. And, a lot of times people won't really read what's in it. And they'll take it in confidence because they've seen a couple of commercials. Or maybe they've seen people in their family use it. And as long as they're still able to function normally, then it must be okay. However, some people do have side effects, some milder and some more severe, and it can be an over-the-counter, something that isn't prescribed necessarily by a physician. So this particular thing has been floating around online, and I believe that it has gotten so out of control because of the COVID-19. There is an effort now collectively from most of the healthcare family or the healthcare people to make an effort to stamp out the use of this parasite drug, Ivermectin. And so this article is out of the Associated Press. And so this thing I've seen people on Twitter promoting, saying that they have it in cough drops or they have it in the form of pills and whatnot. And so this is by Matthew Perroni, and out of Washington, Associated Press. Health experts, medical groups are pushing to stamp out the growing use of a decades-old parasite drug to treat COVID-19. So the warning that it can cause harmful side effects and that there's little evidence that it helps. But outside of this article, I've been seeing this thing being promoted, and it's promoted by different groups, different groups that are part of religions, different groups that are part of cult religions, different groups that are part of political groups, or they're maybe a smaller group that's sort of like branched out and they're part of other political parties, and they have been promoting this all over social media. So it says, with a fourth wave of infections, more Americans are turning to ivermectin. It's a cheap drug used to kill worms and other parasites in humans and in animals. Okay, so federal health officials have seen a surge in prescriptions this summer as well, accompanied by worrying increases in reported overdoses of this ivermectin. So the drug was even given to inmates at a jail in the northwest of Arkansas for COVID-19, despite the federal warnings against that use. And I saw an article basically saying that the people that were incarcerated didn't even know that that's what they were taking. And so that sounds like a lawsuit, or worse than even that. But on Wednesday, a podcaster, Joe Rogan, who has been dismissive of COVID-19 vaccines, announced that he had tested positive recently for the virus and was taking this medicine, this medication, ivermectin, that has been promoted by Republican lawmakers, conservative talk show hosts, and some doctors. Also have amplified by way of social media to millions of Americans who remain resistant to getting vaccinated. So it has also been widely used in other countries, including India and Brazil as well. And so this week, the top U.S. professional groups and doctors and pharmacists appeal for an immediate end to the drug's use outside of research. So we are urging physicians and pharmacists as well, and other prescribers, trusted healthcare professionals in their communities, to warn patients against the use of ivermectin outside of the FDA-approved indications and guidance. So this was said by American Medical Association and 2 pharmacist groups. So large studies are now underway in the U.S. and overseas to determine the drug has any effect on preventing the blunting COVID-19. So the latest plea follows similar warnings from federal and state regulators who are tracking side effects and hospital admissions tied to this drug. So Louisiana and Washington issued alerts after an uptick in calls of poison control centers. Some animal feed supply stores have run out of the drug because the people buying the veterinarian form of it to try and treat this COVID-19. So there's just not any good evidence right now suggesting that this is a good treatment for treating or preventing COVID-19. So this was said by Randy McDonough, a pharmacist in Iowa City, Iowa. So ivermectin is approved by the Food and Drug Administration to treat infections of roundworm and other tiny parasites in humans and in animals like cows, horses, and dogs. Tablets are used for internal parasites, while ointments are used to treat head lice and other skin infections. So the generic drug works by paralyzing the worms and killing their offspring. So FDA has tried to debunk online claims that animal strength versions of the drug can help fight COVID-19. So taking large doses of this drug is dangerous and can cause serious harm. This is what the FDA warned in a public advisory. So the drug can cause nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, seizures, delirium, and even death. This was said by the agency. And so Dr. David Bullaware at the University of Minnesota says the drug side effects are mild at 2 or even 3 times the usual human dose. But formulations for farm animals might contain 1,000 times what's safe for humans. So it's pretty easy to get into toxic levels. This is said by Bulaware, an infectious disease specialist. So all these concentrated doses that are meant for 2,000-pound horses can certainly get people sick or hospitalized for toxicity. So Bulaware says that he prescribed the drug to patients a few times a year in the U.S. and more routinely when working in countries where intestinal parasites are very common. But he and other experts have been alarmed by the explosive growth in the U.S. of ivermectin prescribing. So by mid-August, U.S. pharmacies were filling 88,000 weekly prescriptions for this medication, a 24-fold increase from pre-COVID levels, according to the Center of Disease Control and Prevention. Meanwhile, the U.S. Poison Control Centers have seen a 5-fold increase in emergency calls related to this particular drug, with some incidents requiring hospitalization. So the CDC cited a case of a man who drank an injectable form of ivermectin intended for cattle. He suffered hallucinations, confusion, tremors, and other side effects before being hospitalized for 9 days. So the World Health Organization and National Institute of Health and other medical experts have also recommended against using it outside of carefully controlled patient studies. So the NIH panel found an insufficient evidence for or against the drug for COVID-19, calling for more large and well-designed trials. And so the experts noted that early laboratory research showed ivermectin slowed the replication of coronavirus when grown in monkey cells. But such studies are not useful for gauging real-world effectiveness in humans. So they noted other research suggesting the drug would need to be given at least 100 times the standard dose to have antiviral effects in humans. That means you'd have to take a lot more, which is very dangerous to humans. So the NIH is studying the drug in a large trial comparing a half dozen established drugs to see if they have some effect against the COVID-19. So experts say those interested in ivermectin should ask about enrolling in such studies. So by participating in a clinical trial, you're not going to harm yourself, and you're going to help society generate the knowledge we need to know if this works or doesn't work, said Bulaware. So this is out of the Associated Press. Writer Andrew DeMilo is what I meant to say, contributed to the story from Little Rock, Arkansas. And so this is what I've been seeing floating around online is the ivermectin. And it seems to be the popular drug right now on social media that people are promoting. But if you don't really know what you're doing, and if you're getting something from a veterinarian that's meant for animals and taking the doses that you would take for an animal, then more than likely you'll have these adverse side effects and could end up in the hospital or worse, maybe even death. And so there really is no proof just yet that it works. However, you basically heard what I said in the article. So I guess they need to do more studies on it to see if it even matches up to what it's supposed to, or what people think that it does or whatever. But it sounds like people are taking the dosage that you would take for animals like horses and cows, and they're also taking a version that's probably just really specifically meant for animals, not humans. And so that's the other troubling thing. And it's coming from these groups that are part of certain, political parties, or they're a part of certain cults. And I wanted to also add to this that I don't know if people realize that here in South LA we have some cults that I've been seeing. And, a lot of these groups, they're cult-like religions, I would assume. And I'm going to say that because they're not widely known, I don't think, by the general population, if not at all. And they stay pretty low-key until something big breaks out, maybe, and they're mentioned. But all up and down, I believe it's Crenshaw and Century, right up and down the Century area, there's a lot of strip malls. There's a lot of stores, shopping centers, and ever so often you'll see groups they're pretty much soliciting. They're trying to sell water, they're trying to sell juice, and I think they're raising money for their group. And every now and then in South LA there'll be corner preachers, there'll be people holding up signs, but then there's this group, they also mirror the same group that's on Century, but they have a different color, and they wear a similar type of garb, and they're from like a group as well, which looks like a cultish type of religion. And so I think, if my memory serves me correct, the beginning of it is Israel, the Israelites, and then another group, I believe, might be a faction off of, they're not quite Muslim, but they're another group. And I think they are a little more militant. These groups are more militant. And I noticed the women, they wear long skirts, they wear a head wrap, and the garb they wear will have tassels hanging on the end of it. And I don't know if they're promoting this drug in particular, but I wouldn't be surprised if they were. Or if they were promoting not getting vaccinated. That for sure, I'm sure that's something that they're doing. I don't believe that they believe in getting vaccinated. There are other groups as well that are supposedly Christian religious groups who are also promoting not getting vaccinated. And this is in some of the black communities, some of the Hispanic communities in South LA. And so I'm just trying to make some people aware that this is what's been going on with some of those folks that have not been vaccinated. And it's not just because they don't have access, because there are pharmacies that are set up where COVID vaccine is ready and available. It's just you have groups that are part of certain cult religions. They have their beliefs. They refuse to get vaccinated because of those beliefs. And so some of those beliefs are a little more extreme than others, to the extent to where it seems very dangerous and problematic. So I just thought I would make mention of that, but I don't know if maybe somebody or maybe a reporter has actually branched out and looked around to find out who these groups are. But I know I have seen it, and I've been seeing a lot more of it since this COVID has started. It's usually you see these groups, but I'm seeing a lot more frequent appearances of these groups now that, everything is sort of like semi-open again. But when there were these lockdowns, they were pretty much out on the corners and they were recruiting people. And some of these groups, some of the things that I've heard them say when they're at the corner are extremely violent towards other people. And I believe when you have people that are in government, they're making laws to make it harder for people to vote, make it harder for people to thrive in communities. They begin to give up hope, and then if there's any hope, it's directed in on these groups because they're looking for answers and they're looking for a way out, or they're looking for a leader. And a lot of times what happens is these leaders take advantage of the fact that people are vulnerable and they're in a position where they need some type of assistance, some help. And a lot of times it ends up being the people who are in low income neighborhoods. They're faced with extreme situations like eviction, homelessness, maybe a spike in crime in the neighborhoods, and nobody is getting their voice heard. And then we have these people who they want to elect that basically might have grown up in these neighborhoods, but they've totally distanced themselves. They're far removed from the people that are in the community, and they do a disservice to people from these communities. And they're not trying to help anybody do anything better or change or make change, and they just make things matters worse. And so this is what you're going to see more of people. I wouldn't even be surprised if there's more medications, more things that are being used other than ivermectin. And so I thought this was a good article to bring out, because I believe that what we're going to be seeing is a rise in cults, a rise in people getting sick, not just from these diseases that COVID-19, but people are going to get sick from trying these type of quack doctor or quack cures, or unproven cures, because someone told them it worked. And you're going to have people that are also going to be online selling these things for profit and making money off of people who are desperate because they're afraid or they're in fear that they're either they've contracted COVID and they don't know what to do, they're scared, or they're afraid of getting this disease and whatever other diseases might be coming. And so what we've been seeing in the news is a lot of articles talking about how people have been infected, and how people, even if they get the vaccine, they can still get infected. They may not necessarily be intubated, but just to hear that will cause people to run right in the arms of these cult-like groups looking for answers, because you're not here in these neighborhoods to immediately help these people. So they're going to look for the closest thing next to them. And a lot of times it usually is people that look like them, and they have some level of trust in these individuals because they've kind of bought their trust in ways, not necessarily money, but maybe they offered them a meal, maybe they offered them some kind of solace and comfort in what their language is in their sermons. And if the language or the audience is sort of more about their community and them doing a service in their community to help uplift those people, and here you got these lawmakers, they're not uplifting these communities, then who are they going to believe? And so they go to the arms of these people who might promote the ivermectin, or they might promote all these other quack cures, and people fall into those traps. And that's when you're going to see the rise in a lot of poisonings and people getting sick from these things, like what you see here, because they don't have any trust in government. I mean, what we've been seeing lately is this pushback from the people, the communities. It's been about cutting off unemployment benefits. It's been about cutting off opportunities for people to advance at jobs. People saying that they don't think that minimum wage should be increased. People saying they think slavery is not the problem. The slaveholders are the ones that are supposed to actually get reparations. When you hear that kind of talk in these communities of people who have no voice, no support, nobody's really looking and checking for them. You hear people coming from other places where they have an abundance of resources, but they come here and they're jumping the line to get COVID shots that really are supposed to be for people in these communities. Who are they going to believe? And so that's the thing that's been going on. And then you have a history of people who have been lied to by the government, or they've had experiments done on them, people that maybe had been in their family and they've heard about these experiments. Who do you think they're going to trust? And so the trust has been broken long ago. And so you're trying to gain trust of people, and some are listening because they don't know what to do. It's a last resort, and others are starting to think, well, maybe I should listen to this person because he's actually here in the community. These other people you never see. So if you never see these politicians in these communities, you never see these people actually doing anything to change the things that need to be changed in a positive way, then the people who are really not, they're in the community, but they're not really, their agenda is to make money off of people's ignorance, make money off of people's vulnerability, make a following off of people because they're egocentric and they have a one-sided agenda. They want to build a huge cult following so it can benefit them and their cause. It's not about saving the community. It's about building this great big arena of people to look at them. That's what you're going to get. You're giving rise to this. And that's what happens when you have moved yourself far away from the people that need you the most. And so it gives rise to these type of things like this that you see, these parasite drugs, and also people who are vulnerable to drug abuse, alcohol abuse. That's all in these communities. At every corner there's a liquor store. Notice those weren't closed down during lockdowns. Those stay open in the hood because they know who's going to use them. And so they're not locking down liquor stores. They're not locking down, some of these places that if you think they should lock down, they should lock those down. But those are never locked down. And so then you're going to have more people that are going to drink heavier. They're going to have these overdoses. And that's what we're hearing. That's how some people are dying too. And so with all this going on, it's not helping. You're not helping anyone at all when you tell people that are struggling already and they already don't see any way out of the struggle of what they're dealing with, and they feel like nobody is in support of them. You're telling them that, they should stay poor. They should not get any raises. They should keep getting the minimum wage and it should not be raised. People that do that are not about the community. People that say climate change isn't real, when we see these fires all over the place and we see the flooding happening, those people don't care about those communities. They don't care about this community in South LA. They care about their ego. They care about how they look, and they care about their wallet and their money and how you're going to endorse their campaign. They don't care about helping people in these communities. And so that's why it gives rise to these type of things that you see right here. Ivermectin, which I see it promoted on Twitter, where people are trying to use that to try to bring in black groups of people, and they are having fancy meetings, fancy dinners, and they're promoting this drug right here. And so if it isn't regulated, if it's an overabundance, if it's like for a cow or a horse, then that's what people are taking because they believe somehow in their mind this is going to cure them of COVID-19. So if you want people to get the truth, then you need to do more work. You need to work harder for the people that need it the most.